tonight's session. I can see that lots of teachers are still joining us, but it's my pleasure now to hand over to our wonderful presenters, Emma Craven and Aaron Elias.
Great. Hi, everyone. Can you see us?
Hi. Yep. So
there we go.
If you can't see them, yep, just their little arrows at the top of the screen there. You can change your view.
Okay, great. Thank you, guys, and welcome. Thank you so much for coming today. I hope you're somewhere comfortable and you've got a cup of tea or coffee. And I know it's a lot to ask for people to come in after working all day with the kids and come into a webinar. So we just love you for being here. Thank you. And we think because there's so many of you, you can't all be our mums as well. So that's good. They're usually the only people that listen to what we say.
So look, welcome. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. First of all, this presentation is being recorded, so if you want to watch back over some of it later on, I think it'll be posted on the Matilda website. Could you please mute your microphones for the presentation? That just helps us out. Now, as mentioned before, you can change your view. At the top, you'll have a little a view button, so you can choose whether to see everyone's cameras or just us or just the slides, whatever you like. And in the chat window on the right, there are going to be questions taken. Please leave all questions to the end. But if you do have any questions that you want to ask during the presentation, just type them in there and we'll have one of our colleagues monitoring that window, and then we can answer those at the end of the presentation.
Okay, so a little bit about us, and I decided to do this in the form of a Venn diagram, which I think is the first and only time a Venn diagram has come into to be useful for me in my whole career. I know the kids love making them, don't they? So my name's Emma Craven. I'm on the right of the Venn diagram there. We don't have a lot in common in some ways, apart from our love of science, but a couple of things about me. So my core areas are biology and earth and environmental science, which I guess is really good because Aaron's is physics and chemistry.
Yep.
And he calls that the real sciences, which I really...
Well, yeah, we've got the hard sciences covered and the soft sciences covered.
Yeah, there's a lot of arguing in the house about these things, as you can imagine. And also my areas of interest, I work predominantly with students with really low levels of literacy. I have a lot of EAL and refugee students. We have, my focus is really on growth. So our students sometimes start 3 to 6 years behind where they're supposed to be when they enter secondary school. And so for me, I'm trying to get as much growth in 1 year as possible, sometimes up to 3 years growth in 1 year. My background is I've worked in the state government in the Department of Education in policy, and no one should hold that against me. And I've also worked in some high-performing international schools, but mostly my passion, my interest is working with disadvantaged young people.
And so a little bit about me. I came into teaching a little bit later in life. I had a prior career in physics. I worked in a light lab. And so my areas of interest are physics and chemistry. And yeah, so conversely with Emma, the schools that I've worked in have been high performing schools. So schools that have been really focused on extension and enrichment of students and really pushing for very high scores. So we figure that, you know, between the two of us, we're coming at this from a lot of different angles and we have a lot of complementary experiences.
Okay, I just wanted to talk about our bigger team and acknowledge them, and we're just so proud of our author team, and you're going to probably know at least a couple of names from this slide that you can see at the moment, and they've done just the most terrific job working on the Good Science series, and although we can't fit them all here in our house tonight, though that would be one of the coolest parties we've probably ever hosted. But you know, they're with us in spirit, I'm sure, and hopefully a couple of them are in here as well. But we just want to acknowledge them and their work.
Okay, so this session in a nutshell, what we're planning on going through is a little bit of context. First of all, we want to give you some activities or some suggested activities that you can try in your own classroom for things like critical and creative thinking, scientific skills and literacy and numeracy. We're going to look at how the Good Science textbooks incorporate those activities as well, and then finally introduce you to our first Australian content with the textbooks too.
Yeah, very exciting. And we're going to play you a little bit of audio about that, which is great. So what we know for sure, and I know it's Thursday night and it's probably been a really big day for you guys as well, but I guess, and I don't want to depress anyone, but let's be a little bit honest about the context that we're in at the moment. Even before remote learning, teachers were busier than ever. So I know at my school, and like a lot of schools and your schools too, there's a lot of priorities around competing priorities basically, and lots of lesson plans and what to include in those lesson plans, and you need to do formative assessment, and you need to give feedback, you need to get feedback, you need to embed lots of things, critical and creative thinking, student voice, we need to have more connection with students and more communication with parents, and it goes on and on. And I know you're all aware of that, so I'm not gonna, I actually wrote a list, and it was just like so dark that I kind of decided I'm not going to read it all out. You know what it's like at the moment. And we're also under a lot of pressure because literacy and numeracy results across the country are falling. And for some reason, you know, students are not choosing to go into science anymore. So I guess that's a little bit of a context about this workshop, about why we want to work smarter and not harder. And I guess at the heart of that is we couldn't work harder even if we tried. So we appreciate all those things, and we want to give you some activities today that will help you in your classroom. But also a lot of these things are things that you can see incorporated in the textbooks. But even if you don't use the Good Science textbooks, you're going to get some really good stuff, I guess, to take away. Some, I guess we call them kind of Trojan horses or heavy hitters, you know, it's activities and things that have a lot of other elements packed in as well. Oh, sorry, I was like pausing for effect. I was just building anticipation, sorry everyone. So we did a lot of research in New South Wales, and I guess you guys have all seen this yourself, but most textbooks were just really heavy, really text dense. They were not accessible for students, and they were certainly not engaging. And they were kind of making things a little bit harder. So that's where this Good Science series was born, I guess. We also wondered why textbooks had to be just content for students. Why couldn't they be really good pedagogy as well? And why can't we include all those really helpful things that teachers need into a textbook? So basically, everything is really carefully curated, including the activities we're going to show you today, and just to make sure that everything we do has the highest impact possible, but also genuinely saves you time because you don't have any. Let's be honest. So we're going to go through some activities with you now. Okay, so the first things we're going to talk about is critical and creative thinking. And, you know, we all kind of know how important this is, and we're assessing on it now and all that kind of thing, but we often, I guess, put it off to the side, or we didn't really know how to approach it. So one activity that we use really successfully is this See No Wonder. So you give the students a really great image, and you're asking them to come up with 2 or 3 things they can see, 2 or 3 things they know, and 2 or 3 things they wonder when they see things. And I'm just going to ask, someone's got their microphone on. I'm so sorry, would you mind muting that? Fantastic, thank you. I could hear myself talking to myself, which would be, as you can imagine, I'm very annoying, so that was doubly annoying. So yeah, and it's particularly around the wonders, the things that they're wondering about these images. As you can see from this picture, this was an artist who was working with a biologist and kind of designing the perfect human being. So there's a lot of things that kids would see, know, and wonder in this image. I've got another image in the next slide. This is from the National Geographic Planet or Plastic photo series, and there's so much there that you could unpack. So basically, you're looking for wonderful images. This one happens to be in the Good Science textbook as well. So also on the right-hand side, we've got some thinkers keys. So they're based on the Tony Ryan's thinkers keys, this amazing guide. And these are little tools that you can use at the start of every lesson for a few minutes. It can be a warm-up. I generally have these out at the start of class, and students will actually work on them while I'm doing the role or doing some kind of setup. They're so popular that I have this weird class that runs to my bag and goes through my bag to get the thinkers keys out and then hands them out. And I have to say, I use this from year 7 through to my senior classes as well. But you can see here, the first one's interpretations. I won't read them all to you, but imagine that scientists have discovered a horse has a horn on its head. So I guess it's a unicorn. And think of some different explanations for why it exists. And we'd love to give you some sample answers for these, but us as adults are just never as amazing or creative as the ones that I've heard students come up with. And sometimes it's the students that perhaps are not as successful in, you know, the really academic side of science that come up with these incredible answers for these. So.
I guess that's one of the beautiful things about the See No Wonder and the Thinkers Keys is they're so accessible. You'll have a lot of students who maybe don't feel comfortable putting their hand up or answering a question in your classroom. But with these things, there's no right or wrong answer. And so all students feel like they're able to contribute, and also gives you a really good idea of their critical and creative thinking skills when it comes time to assess those things. And they're fun. They're a lot of fun.
They're really.
So a couple of other activities that we really like for critical and creative thinking. In the top left there is the box of junk. So the box of junk is, well, it's a box of junk. So a lot of schools have this hanging around in your prep room. It might be just craft materials or something like that. If in doubt, you can just get the students to do this with the objects in their pencil cases. That'll work as a box of junk as well. And the great thing, well, the box of junk.
I feel like we need a better name for it than box of junk. We'll work on that in the future.
Yes. But this is really good for modelling. And so one thing that we like to do is give the box of junk out to different groups of students and ask them to model something. So one thing that I've liked to do in the past is Newton's 3 laws. So you'll tell each group, probably 3 or 4 students, use the objects in the box of junk to demonstrate Newton's 3 laws. And then you can walk around to every group and bring the rest of the class around to every group, and every group can explain to everybody else how what they've built demonstrates those 3 laws.
Yeah, and I was saying, if you're not a super nerd who's into physics, then another example, I got my students to model mitosis and meiosis as well, and that worked really well. The second picture here with the 2 lines of students facing each other, it looks like they're about to break into some kind of dance off. It's called a line debate. I actually had one today, so that's kind of funny timing. But any scientific issue, so we had one on genetic screening, basically anything, and you give one side of the class they're for something and one side's against it, and basically they go take in turns to make a point for their argument, and if it's a clear and rational and good point, then they can steal somebody from the other line. And a girl actually, this sounds made up, sorry, but a girl stayed back after my class today and said to me, that is probably the best way I've learnt this topic since we've been studying it, and she just really enjoyed it. So she's quite feisty. So I think it's one of those ones as well that, you know, it's a nice break from chalk and talk, and they love having that back and forth, and they really do get a much kind of deeper understanding of an issue as well.
And our last diagram there is our little spy. That is for Saboteur, the activity is called. And so what we like to do with Saboteur is, again, break students into groups, maybe 5 people in a group for this one. And before you begin, everyone puts their heads down on the table. You walk around and one person in each group, you tap them on the shoulder and they are the saboteur. You then give the group a task to complete, and it can be something as simple as a worksheet. And the saboteur, their job is to deliberately mislead the people in their group without being caught. And so it's really interesting. The saboteur needs a really good understanding of the topic that they're doing, because they need to be able to be subtle enough to mislead the rest of the team. The rest of the team need to understand the topic well, because they need to be aware of when the saboteur is misleading them. And there's a few ways to score points with this. I've seen it done a lot of different ways. Personally, what I like to do is, after a group has finished the task, whatever it is, they then get one guess to pick who the saboteur was. If they can pick it, they win. If they can't, then they don't.
I think it's a nice way to jazz up a worksheet kind of task as well. And I mean, it very quickly turns into a lot of accusations flying around, but it is, once again, really fun.
Yeah, it's a really fun activity for something that could be quite dry, but yeah, it makes it a lot more enjoyable and the students find it a lot more engaging.
Okay, we've got a couple of literacy activities here, and some of these are in the textbook as well. On the left, you probably will recognise this. This is reciprocal reading. Reciprocal reading has got one of the highest effect sizes for literacy. If you're into effect sizes and Hattie and all that sort of thing, I'm not sure how cool it is to talk about it anymore. But basically you have a group of 3 or 4. I think 4 is good for juniors and 3 is better for seniors. And you have each person has the role, so a predictor, a questioner, a clarifier, and a summarizer. These are bookmarks here on the left, and we have all these resources for you as well in a Google Drive. So when they send out this PowerPoint, it'll come along with that. And I have a class set of these bookmarks laminated. I just hand them out when I do the activity. And you'll see there's also a visualizer role. I don't use the visualizer one. And when I have a group of 3, I have the predictor as the summarizer as well. But basically, instead of just reading a few pages of the book, they start by, firstly, the predictor makes a prediction based on the headings and the images, what's the text going to be about. They then read it through together. The questioner then asks some really great, deeper questions about the text. The clarifier then tries to answer those and clarify any other terms that maybe people didn't understand. And the summarizer comes in right at the end and summarizes. So it's a great activity for really, I guess, a much deeper reading activity than just reading the text. And the other one on this page is called the Freya model, and you might be familiar with this one as well. Usually just a table. This is a very jazzy, arty version of a Freya model here, but a table with the 4 squares. They put the definition in the first square. So this one has got the keyword is cells. So you put the keyword in the middle. Characteristics of all cells. Examples of some cells like blood cell or whatever, neuron, whatever you wanted to do, and then some non-example of cells as well. So, and you wouldn't, when you're using these, you wouldn't obviously do 10 terms in one lesson. They take some time, especially for the junior classes, but you could do between 1 and 3 of these in one session.
Yeah, and these are a great vocabulary activity to make sure that the students aren't just, learning a new word and memorizing a definition. The Freya model really checks that they understand the word by making them fill in those 4 boxes. It helps you check that they have a really deep understanding of what this new word is. Okay, so these are some examples from the Good Science textbook. So literacy links and numeracy links, we know that these are things that we need to be embedding in our lessons, and sometimes it's just difficult to remember these. So each lesson in the Good Science textbook has a literacy link and a numeracy link. And so first of all, it's really great having those as a reminder on the page that, just to keep it in your mind, yes, this is something that we need to do, but also these are sort of focused on building skills that students need for later years in science. So, for example, how many of you have had a student come into Year 12 science who can't draw a graph? That drives me insane. So there's a few numeracy links in the book where the students practice drawing graphs, and you can see there's one here. And all of these activities are designed to really build those skills that they need later on, the scientific literacy and numeracy that they will need for later years in science. These are also great activities as introductory activities for a lesson, so starters. You can use them in whatever way that you like, but yeah, they're just on for every lesson. We have a numeracy link and a literacy link.
Great. And this is the part where I get a little bit weird because I just love Socratic circles so much. And I apologize if anyone knows all about them. I'll be really quick. But I feel like Socratic circles, it's like, this is a big statement. The best activity I ever have used as a teacher. So putting it out there. And whenever I finish them and the students leave, I sit in the classroom and I think, I might be the best teacher in the world, even though that's clearly not true. And if you know about Socratic circles, you know it's not really the teacher that makes it interesting. So Socratic circles came out of a bunch of research that said teachers were talking up to 97% of the time in class. And I think we've all been guilty of that. You can tell from me, I'm rather chatty. So it involves the students having this active discussion. You have two circles. So you have the inside circle, and they're the talkers, and you have the outside circle, and they're the people judging the inside circle, which is fun as well, and they're not allowed to talk. And I'm not allowed, the teacher's not really supposed to talk either. So they read an article, usually about a 1-page, 2-page article maybe for senior science, and it's about a scientific issue. So as I mentioned before, you know, genetic screening, or could be to do with climate change, whatever it is. And then you have, as a teacher, maybe a few prompting questions, and then they start discussing that issue in their inside circle. And this first round, I guess, if you want to call it that, takes about 15, 25 minutes. So Socratic circles are a good activity too, because it takes up your whole lesson, because they then switch circles. And they also hear their feedback, which is great. I'll just show you the feedback form here. So I've just got some examples of articles on the left there. By the way, when I said the teacher writes some prompting questions, I've also had students who've written the questions and run the circle as well. And then that makes me really obsolete. I can just, that might pretty much go home, I think, because they're pretty much running it themselves. I do this through all year levels of science too, which is great. You can see here on the right this feedback form, which we put into your resources pack, just asking, did they dig below the surface meaning? Did they talk clearly and loudly? Did they avoid hostile exchanges? It's kind of fun sometimes when they don't avoid those. But then, most important question, number 2, you have to name, the students all have, in the outside circle, have to name people who did well. And as you can imagine, this whole activity is based on positive feedback. And so you go around the outside circle at the end, and they have to read out people's names, and the kids look so proud when they hear their name. And you can imagine what happens in the next circle when they switch. Everyone knows what the criteria is and how it's being mentioned, and they really want to hear their name read out. And so you have these amazing, rich conversations. And as you can imagine, I work with students, a lot of students who are refugees, or they're from Afghanistan. And so they're Indigenous students. And so they're sharing their stories and context in these circles as well. And that's why you feel amazing when they're done. So I'll stop talking about how that.
Just one thing before we stop, though, that again, it's great for accessibility. So again, students who may not normally want to speak up in science, again, there's no right or wrong answer in a Socratic circle. It's just about reading the article, having an opinion, and then discussing that with your classmates. So everyone is able to participate, everyone's able to chat. And yeah, when these things work, or after the first couple, they will work. It's great. They sing. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I forgot to mention. Yeah, the first one's awkward as they're all figuring out they are a bit shy, and then it's on. And I get all these weird messages from my students asking, "Can we do one tomorrow?" and stuff. They really do get quite obsessed with them. And I guess another example of a break from that chalk and talk as well.
So one other thing that we need to focus on, I guess, is how we build skill or science skills into lessons. Now, we're not just talking about the practical skills, those are important as well, but the analytical skills are becoming more and more important towards later years in science too. So again, how many of you out there have had, final year students who cannot write a conclusion properly, or don't know how to phrase a hypothesis? So these sorts of skills are just as important as the practical skills, and these are things that we really, as teachers, we need to focus on building. And so what we've tried to do with the book is build these skills in from the earlier year levels all the way through. So we want year 7 students to understand how to do a conclusion and how to write a hypothesis. And so these are scaffolded, but these are certainly things that we want them to be able to do as well. So these are just some examples of the experiments that are included in the book. You can see there our discussion questions are designed to, to really elicit that understanding and make sure that students, a lot of times when you read a prac report, the students have performed the prac and they've answered the questions, but they found it difficult to draw what they've done in the practice and, you know, line it up to what they've done theoretically. And so the discussion questions and the conclusion are there to bridge that gap and make sure they can relate what they've done in the experiment to what they've learned about in class.
Okay, so we're just going to have a quick look at the book. So just to show you, I guess, where some of those activities can be found as well. So this is a opening lesson. So this is the start of a chapter. And I don't know about you, but my favourite thing to do, I've been writing textbooks for 13 years now for a lot of different publishers, but one of my favourite things to do when I go through a science textbook is just skip the chapter opener completely and just totally ignore it. So we wanted to make something that you could use and you could use in your first few lessons of introducing a topic. And we wanted everything on here to be something you could use and it would really work. So we've got, starting with a little paragraph that you could read to the kids or they could read. And we know how important it is to link what they know already to what they're learning. So that's why we've got this like brainstorming section there under learning links. And we know visual cues are so important to young people too. So just a few visual cues to make them think about what they already know and have a brainstorm. And we also know that this also really does help with their confidence, so they realise they know more than they thought they did. You've got here the see, know, wonder image we talked about before, as well as the thinker's keys. And then lastly, we've just got a little story, little hashtag. We tried to find something really interesting about science for the start of every chapter so that they go home and perhaps talk to their, you know, around the dinner table. Unlike teenagers where they usually say, I didn't learn anything today, they might say, well, can I tell you something pretty interesting? So that's where that came from.
So this is what a lesson looks like in the Good Science textbook. You'll notice in the top left, there is a learning intention, and in the bottom right, that's bookended with a skills check or success criteria. Now, the learning intentions are all based on a dot point from the New South Wales curriculum. So one double page spread in the book is designed to be one lesson and one dot point. So it's really useful to make sure that you're covering everything. The key terms are there on the left, a handy reference for any new vocabulary. We've got our literacy link and our numeracy link there as well. There's the main body text. Now, each of those paragraphs, you'll notice there's a little question underneath each one in blue. Those are there just to make sure the students have read it. In the top right, there's any investigations associated with this lesson. There's our checkpoint questions. And finally, the challenge question is an extension question for students that need a bit of an extra challenge. And there's lots of different types, things like research or creative thinking or something like that, but just an extra challenge we can add in.
Great. Just quickly, this is at the end of our chapters, so we have a visual summary, which we really love. We know that flashcards are one of the best things for students as far as retaining knowledge. So we wanted to do that as like a giant flashcard, I guess, and a visual summary for test preparation or for jogging their memory and revising as well. And our end of chapter questions there are modelled off a video game. I was like saying to Aaron, perhaps the world's most boring video game, but still a video game. So you can see that they kind of level up. The questions get a little bit harder. Students really connect with this idea of, you know, it's not luck, it's hard work and effort, and then I'll go up to the next level, and that's what those experience points that are on there mean as well. So it's kind of exciting.
There's teacher support materials included with the Good Science books as well. So on the left there, we have the teaching plans. There's worksheets for every lesson, and the worksheets are designed, again, as extension activities. They're aimed at either the year or the year above what the students are in, so they're great little extension activities. There's answers, obviously, and in the bottom left there, we have our audio hits. We weren't sure how to do a picture of an audio file, but that's as close as we could get. Those are short 2 or 3 minute audio clips that are designed as just-in-time teaching support. So for substitute teachers or for teachers teaching outside their method, or if you haven't taught a particular subject before, you can listen to that prior to the lesson, and it gives you some ideas of activities you can run and some common misconceptions, things like that. So those are included for every lesson as well.
Okay, we're hurrying because we really want to get to this because we love it so much. So we have these amazing audio bites that have been added in by Leandra that look at the Indigenous and First Australian perspectives. And I think we all know sometimes when this is included in a textbook, it's just about ecology, it's about the environment, but actually the Indigenous Australians, so some of the the most ancient scientists in the world. And so she's kind of bringing her knowledge to physics, to chemistry, to geology, and lots of other things as well. And I just want to, you have to hear her voice. I'm just going to play you one little tiny clip. And then she goes into a welcome to the book, and then I'll just skip forward a little bit.
Sorry, and we actually can't hear Leandra. Could you turn your volume up a little bit?
Oh, no, I don't think we can. I'm sorry, we have it up as high as we can.
That's okay.
Oh, that's a shame. Well, you know, when this gets sent out, oh, that's a shame that you were just staring at us while we were listening to it.
That's okay, and we can share Leandra's audio with our guests after
it's
this
like
session.
the best part. Yeah, sorry.
That's something for you to look forward to because it's really great.
Oh, yeah, she's got a hypnotic voice. All right, thanks for letting us know, Catherine.
So look, finally, we'd just like to just shout out a huge thank you to you all. Thanks for coming. I know it's at the end of a hard day of teaching. We really appreciate you coming along and listening to us. Yeah, thanks a lot. So on the left, we have our resources. We have a resource folder that we'll share with you all. When this PowerPoint gets emailed to you all, we'll make sure we have a link to our resources folder that includes all of the things you see on the left there.
Yeah, and a big thank you from me too. Poor Aaron. You can imagine at our wedding, I got to do all the speeches and stuff. But yeah, it honestly, we've been really overwhelmed, I guess, we've got lots of emails from people about the books, and yeah, we're really overwhelmed by everyone's support. So thank you, and thank you so much for coming to a webinar on a Thursday night. Oh.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Emma and Aaron, for that fantastic presentation. We do have a few questions, if you could stay on to answer. Jenny Weber asked, what do you actually mean by a non-example for the Freya model?
Oh, yeah. It's going to sound so silly. So for a cell, so you could say an example of a cell is a blood cell, and a non-example could be a table. So yeah, I know it sounds kind of obvious, but I guess for some of especially my EAL students and some of my other students with low literacy, it's really important for them to make that distinction.
But I guess for students who really want to demonstrate their understanding as well, they can be a little more creative and say that an example of not a cell is a muscle or a virus. A virus isn't a cell, right? Yeah, things like that. So things that are close to cells but not exactly cells. Yeah, things like that.
Don't ask me any more questions about biology in front of everyone.
Thank you. Taylor asked a question. Many of these activities would initially need solid classroom behaviour management and students to be able to listen actively to their peers. So it was sort of more, I guess, the point that Taylor was making.
That's very true. But I have to say, and I hate it when people say, when you're really engaging and your lesson's engaging, the kids will just magically behave themselves. I really can't stand it when people say that. But I think for some of these activities, they are so exciting, and they have to listen to each other so much that it does help with classroom management, I have to say.
Yeah, and you know that kids, they're going to be listening a lot more if they know they're going to have to speak soon. And so most of the activities, you know, I've spoken about the accessible ones, the ones where everyone needs to speak. So they do tend to listen a bit more if they know they could get called on as well.
Absolutely. Now, Rochelle just asked a question. Do the books come with digital programs? Catherine did answer that in the little chat. Absolutely. Both the student and the teacher ebooks are enriched with additional resources, worksheets, you know, tests, auto marking quizzes, that sort of thing, answers, web links, and lots of other goodies in there. Where do you buy the book? You can either go onto our website, you can go through your preferred supplier, but I will send you some more information as well after this presentation. The next question, I think, was from Rosemary is saying, if I have the textbook, how do I get access to the teacher resources? The teacher resources are available for purchase for $199.95. However, if you do purchase class sets, you are welcome. We do offer, complimentary teacher access, and that is digital only. Who else do we have? So Faye said, have purchased the book, can I get access to the stage 4 and stage 5 books? Yes, absolutely, that's not a problem, Faye. We can be in touch about that. Lots of other people are just saying thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, which is absolutely brilliant. So basically, yeah, the books are available now, of course. We do have a lot of schools that are already using them. The print and digital, only $79.95 each. You can purchase digital only, and as I mentioned, the teacher resources, $109.95. The resources, as Aaron and Emma went through, one double-page spread covering one syllabus dot point. There's, of course, the literacy and the numeracy links in there. So, yeah, all sorts of goodies in there. But please, we will send extra information and, yep, whatever else you need, we can be in touch with. So if anybody has any further questions, again, we'd just like to thank Emma and Aaron very much for their time today. Absolutely fantastic presentation. And yeah, we will be arranging for your certificates of attendance to be sent, and also your complimentary stage 4 book as well. So if anybody else has any other questions, please feel free to email or pop in the chat room. Catherine, do you have anything else that you would like to add?
No, other than say a huge thank you to Emma and Aaron for tonight's session. That was wonderful. So I think there's lots and lots of people are just saying thank you for the session, guys, and complimenting you on the resource you've developed.
Very
yeah,
kind.
Yeah, Taylor said the textbook looks great. Resources. So yeah, honestly, the teacher resources are absolutely brilliant. They're so supportive. You've got your digital version of the student book in there, as well as a whole heap of extra goodies. The audio hits I absolutely love, which are perfect for sort of younger teachers, just to give them a few tips and hints at the beginning, but also just to sort of make sure you're sort of on the right page with all that information. So yeah, absolutely brilliant. The resource is suitable for every student in every classroom, differentiated. So it's not just for the lower ability students or the higher ability students. Yeah, it has just been built from the ground up, from all new resources. Yeah, very excited about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for that, Fiona, as well. And you just got a nice message there from Gillian, which you can follow up as well. She's just asking to see the book at her new school. So we'll follow up with you, Gillian, behind the scenes.
Yes, absolutely. And I will put my details there as well. So you can keep emailing me, for any further questions. Wonderful. Well, thank you all so much for attending as well. Very, very much appreciated for all your support as well. Oh, sorry. Jude actually just asked a question here. I'm just zooming through. Can you please explain the thinker's key?
Yeah. So, and I hope you're still here because it's being recorded, I guess. But basically, they're just like, there's a lot of. I feel like I didn't explain the thinker's keys at all now. I got so excited that I skipped over it. But they're little activities, critical and creative thinking activities, and there's a lot of them. So if you Google Thinker's Keys, I think there's over 25 of them. And so there's one called the alphabet, which is basically think of a term from this topic. So if you're doing chemistry, think of a word about chemistry from A all the way through to Z. And then there's a bunch of other Thinker's Keys too. And sort of, I think for me, I usually make a full set of them at the start of a topic. And then I cut them out and use them as cards. And basically, the students all work on a key, and then they share their answers. And their answers are usually really creative, really funny, really interesting. So they're short, little, maybe 10-minute activities that can kind of start the lesson.
I use them at the start of most lessons when I'm teaching science. So yeah, I write up on the board. My students are so sick of it now. I write think in big red letters, and then I write up a thinker's key question, and then they can work with their friends to answer it. And then, yeah, as Emma said, I pick random people they share with the class, and yeah, it's just a great way to get them thinking and to get them kind of excited. They do find them very fun. So it's a great opener for a lesson.
Excellent. Rebecca just said some great ideas, especially when linked to context examples. Faye has said the book is nicely put together. Great job. Thank you very much for that, Faye. Yes, so yeah, I will contact Gillian. Grace has said lower ability and EALD easily able to access the content.
Yeah, well, definitely. Like that's my real lens that I look at things through. Whereas Aaron's really looking at the extension and the other end of it with students. But once you have a look at some of the spreads and the language that we use, just making sure things are really, really clear. I think particularly those groups, would find it really useful and accessible.
Yep, excellent. Jude said excellent, thank you. So yes, I think that was probably about all the questions that we had.
All right, thanks guys. We might end the meeting there, but thank you so much for your time tonight, and I hope everyone has a wonderful evening.